Okay, I think we're live. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS Office Hours with guest JT. And oh yeah,
Well,
my
hello,
hand is
friends.
indeed. I'm just impressed that my hand was pointing the right way when I did that.
Perfect. Yeah, if I did it. Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
nice. Indeed. Yeah, so we have JT with us today. And just an excellent time to ask any questions that you might have about Yacht, because then we'll be able to give even more in-depth answers than I can, because JT is the super expert. So if you're new to the show, what we do here every Friday is we just talk about Serenity OS and adjacent subjects and projects, I guess. And you really bring the questions. So we talk about whatever chat brings up. So this is your time to bring the questions. In the meantime, I'm just going to say hello, friends, to everybody. That's a whole lot of people already saying hello, which is lovely. And they are calling you Justin Timberlake in the chat, I guess.
I saw that. Right.
I guess so. That's
Sadly,
something you
I do
just
not have his singing voice. That would be a nice thing.
yet.
Yeah, right. Because I'm working so hard at that.
Indeed.
I am a morning person. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Alex was asking if we're morning people, and JT is. I am probably not. Although I'm sometimes still awake when it becomes morning.
That's true. Which kind of makes it nice because as I'm waking up, you're still have a few hours of work left in you. So when we were
Yeah,
collaborating, this would be our key time. I would wake up,
indeed.
we'd chat for a couple hours.
That's really been like honestly one of the biggest challenges with doing the Yakt language is just trying to coordinate waking hours with you.
Yeah.
Sweden and New Zealand are not optimally separated.
Like a hard mode language development. Get that.
Yeah. It's funny though, because I mentioned that to some other people who were in various locations, and they all said like, "Oh yeah, New Zealand is like real hassle to schedule with," like people in other locations as well. But I hear it's lovely.
It is quite nice.
So let's see. What are we taking here? From Sophia asking, you mentioned that Yakt is designed for UIs. What do you think makes a language well suited for that? Well, that's a very good question. In my personal view, it really depends on the UI toolkit, because there are different UI toolkits that go take sort of different paths to building UI. And the traditional way that I've got most experience with is sort of an object-oriented UI description, where you have some sort of a widget base class that you then place out. And then you have sort of a hierarchy or a recursive hierarchy of widget trees where you place different buttons and checkboxes and things like that. And they all inherit from sometimes like a sequence of parent classes that provide functionality. And I think something that makes a language well suited for that is obviously having things like classes with inheritance and dynamic dispatch. And if you look at some other modern languages that choose to go different paths, you'll find that it's taking people a long time to figure out how to build GUIs with such languages, because you have to find new ways of thinking. Like these object-oriented patterns are really ingrained, I guess, in the way we've been doing GUIs for the longest time. I don't know, JT, if you have a lot of experience doing GUI stuff. I kind of get the impression of you as a GUI avoider.
No, not at all. I was kind of thinking I haven't really implemented GUIs so much as just used APIs for creating GUIs, uh, like graphical applications. And I did a lot of BOS stuff back when BOS was a fun, hot topic. But I guess that was a few years ago. Yeah.
One or two. Yeah, but I mean, it's it's a really broad question. Like, what makes a language good for UI? I think if we are allowed to be a little bit fluffy, I think UI code wants to be really lightweight and sort of easy to write, very similar to pseudocode almost, because with UI, you tend to want to do like these big sweeping changes because you come up with some new way that you want to try out. Oh, I wish the UI would look like this instead. And if that means that you have to, rewrite 500 lines of XML or whatever, you're just not going to do it. And you're going to be frustrated that the language is hard to work with. So I think in a more in fluffy terms, I feel like a lightweight language that's easy to edit, easy to make big changes. That's sort of really nice. And I feel like a classic example is if you look at C GUI libraries like GTK, that they can be kind of rough to work with because you end up with just so much code, like in terms of lines, to do something that you could do like in 30% of the line count in C++ with Qt or something like that. So that's important to me, that the language is really lightweight and you can get a lot done with a small amount of text. But I feel like that's something that we're going to come back to and have to learn more about as the language develops, as we actually start using it for GUI stuff. So let's take this question from A. Brecha, saying that it's good to see us. That's very nice. I did mention in the update that Yakt was passing tests. What are those and how are they designed? So maybe you can answer that because you wrote a lot of the tests.
Sure. I mean, so we had, I'm sure Andreas just kind of talked about the initial implementation of Yakt was a Rust-based compiler. And to get that Rust-based compiler up and running, we used the Rust testing infrastructure and got probably up to, how many total tests? Something like 300, 350.
Something like that, yeah.
Just to kind of test like different parts of, the parser, type checker, code generator, and then samples of the language itself to make sure that the samples themselves work correctly. So those are the tests. And then recently, I wrote a kind of test harness in Yakt itself that would go through the test, be able to run and compare the outputs to the expected outputs. The way it tends to do it is, I don't remember who implemented this part, but there's like a little comment in the top of the test that says how to do it. But it's really lightweight. It's not really intended to be like anything more than just set up the test, compile it, capture the error if we get an error, or capture the output if we have an output. And then, yeah. And I think I just checked it this morning and we're at 140 out of 300 and something. Yeah.
Yeah. We blew past 40% earlier today.
Yeah.
While you were sleeping. So that was really nice. And it always feels like we're just one or two changes away from just like this waterfall of suddenly most tests passing if we just get some big blocks of functionality in.
I think we're getting close. I think I was working on methods the other day, and I think once we get methods in, that'll be another probably 10 or 15 tests passing.
Yeah.
So we'll see when that happens.
We will indeed. So Adler is asking, hello, Andreas and JT. Awesome work with Yakt. I look forward to contributing. QQ, is there a future for Yakt outside the SerenityOS project, maybe being used as a mainstream language? Possibly.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
see if someone does it.
I guess I look at that as like, if that accidentally happens, cool. But I'm not going to prioritize that in any way, at least in my own work, because I feel like that would just distract from what I consider to be one of our great strengths in this situation, in that we have like a single customer, which is ourselves, and we only need to satisfy our own use case. And so that allows us to be sort of laser focused on improving our own situation, I think. But if it turns out that this becomes really good, we love using it, and then a whole bunch of people learn it while working on Serenity, and they bring it elsewhere. Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I kind of encouraged early on is that it worked cross platform. So the CI works across Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and still to this day does the same thing. We test on all three platforms
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
true.
like, why not keep that working? If we can help it, not let anything slip in that's not cross platform, then that leaves the door open, say 6 months from now, 12 months from now, if someone wants to take it and then repackage it as some kind of cross-platform new systems language. That's great. You
Yeah,
know.
totally. Yeah, I think that that was a wise choice. And like totally to your credit, because I would never have bothered with Windows. So I appreciate that you did that, I think. And, I would be happy if it becomes so good that other people find use for it. I just think that it's not something that we need to prioritize. And I think I'd like to see things approached from that angle, like because so often when people make a new language, they sort of come at it in this way that, oh, everything's going to be awesome with this language, and we want everyone to use it.
Right. Right.
Um,
And for us, that was complete opposite. When we started designing, we were like, okay, what is the language for Serenity going to look like? And
right.
we just took like machetes and hacked away all the other possible design directions so we could just laser focus on the Serenity direction.
Yeah, and chances are that it will become so it is idiosyncratic that people won't think it's useful.
Maybe.
Um, but we'll find out. Uh, Anyways, we got a question from Nicholas asking if Yacht will always transpile to C++ or someday will create ELF binaries. So that's something that I think has been asked in every office hours since we introduced the language. And the answer is, or at least my answer is, sure, we will probably create ELF binaries one day. But at the moment, while we have like a million lines of code in Serenity that's all C++, it's really valuable to be able to interoperate with that code and be able to like do stuff like instantiate C++ templates into yakt seamlessly. I have a hunch that that's going to be really, really valuable in the incremental effort to port the system to a new language. But once if we get to a point where all of Serenity is written in yakt, then yeah, having a transpiler is just silly at that point, because and then we can think about um, lowering to machine code or whatever. And I'm sure that if we get that far, then that will just be something we automatically do because the project is full of people who love this type of stuff. So that will probably just happen. But at this moment, I feel like it would be a huge sort of misallocation of effort to to try to do that right now, because the language is so young and so immature, and um, it's kind of the same reason that we decided to put it into feature freeze, which was that the more features you add right now, the harder it gets to bring up the self-hosted compiler, and you sort of it's a bit like swimming with added weights, I guess. And tying yourself to a machine code generator as well would make it so much harder to work on the language. But
Yeah.
I don't know. This is just my sort of hunch because I haven't actually worked on languages. I know you have, but I saw your face when I brought up the idea of lowering to machine code right now. So
I think it's no, I mean, at some point we want to, but yeah, it would definitely slow us down. And to the point about like adding features, um, one of the things that when we were saying we should just put like let's just stop adding features because we haven't actually used Yacht to write Serenity code yet. Like we're writing the self-host compiler in Yacht, which is great, but we actually haven't stood up any GUI apps in Yacht just yet. And I think until we actually start using it, like we really don't want to be adding new features or new additions to like code generation or anything. Like we want to make sure that the language itself is correct first and actually does what the intent was originally.
Right, right. Okay, so I got a super chat here. I got a call out from Jesus, who's asking if Yacht will continue to support Linux once Use and Serenity goes into full swing. Thanks for being awesome. Thank you for the super chat, Jesus. I really appreciate that. Yes, of course, we will continue to support Linux because Serenity always bootstraps off of some other system, at least now, until most people in the world are using Serenity as their main operating system, at which point we can stop supporting building on Linux. But until then, we're definitely going to need to be able to run on Linux. I think, as JT was saying, it's really not that much effort to stay working on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So I think the initial, really the initial work was the hard part, like getting all of the, I don't know, like platform specific stuff up and running in a test suites and stuff like that. And now that that's working, we just have to maintain it. Because at least it's my intuition about compilers that what we're going to be doing is like expanding our test suite, and but it's not going to be doing that much differently in the future. Like it's still going to be taking in code and spitting out some kind of executable, whether that's C++ or an ELF binary. It's like the black box is going to have the same inputs and outputs essentially that we want to test. So yes.
It's like Clang on all three platforms. So it's not like hard mode support across platform. It's like, as long as you have Clang on that system, you should be okay.
Yeah, I guess one thing that will require some thinking is 32-bit support, which we may want to do, or which we're probably going to want to do because Serenity supports 32-bit. We haven't really thought about that, but that's a minor complexity. Okay, let's go back a little bit.
Some questions earlier than that one too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just going back in time here. So Linus, hello Linus, how's it going? Asking, do we think with Yacht it's still viable to have libjs bindings for system libraries? I don't see why not. In fact, I would imagine, if anything, it makes it easier to do sort of code generation, and anything that would want to use like static reflection will have better tools for that. So unlike C++, we will have the ability to generate any kind of static reflection, right? So if we want to create generated JavaScript bindings for a yakt class, in theory, that could even be part of the language.
I was not to design a piece of the programming language with you live, but let me throw this one at you. By the way, this is what it's like when the two of us chat, and we're chatting about Yacht for a second. Okay, check this out. So I worked on ChaiScript with JSON. I later worked on a Rust equivalent. But this idea of being able to embed a scripting language up and into an application. So you could easily script it kind of a la Lua, but in something that works really tightly with the language that's the host language. We could make Yacht so that it was easy to reflect up, like out the API surface to a scripting language, so that you could use the scripting language to drive the application. Kind of like Lua was for the World of Warcraft client, or Lua's used in a bunch of other places too. But
that seems really neat.
Because think of like GUI apps where you got the configuration language, the scripting language that can drive business logic-y types of things. That's easy to tweak without any recompilation. Anyhow.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. It also reminds me of state serialization and deserialization. Like if you want to sort of suspend an application to a save file or something like that.
Yeah.
That's also like we haven't really done that properly in Serenity. Like some things have some early attempts at that, but nothing really goes all the way. And I feel like that's something that could be baked into a language, and similar to how it's done with like Objective-C, where they have these serializable things. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I'm not, but yeah, Rust has some serialization stuff that's not built in, but it's like part of a really standard set of tools that you use. I have to think about that one. I mean, I'm really keen on the idea of something that you can easily script GUI apps with. Maybe we'll play with that later on.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think I like the idea, and I think it would mesh well with JavaScript because we already have a JavaScript engine, so it's sort of like the logical target. And then, of course, you could also aim for a script like yakt as a scripting language as well, if you could get like fast compile, REPL kind of thing. But I don't know.
This
I guess
crawl, walk, right? Yeah.
yeah, crawl, walk, run. I know. I know. Yeah, I'm just thinking back
Again,
on.
something else we repeat to each other all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You gotta crawl before you walk, before you
But it's a
run.
cool idea. We'll kind of put that out there on the horizon. Maybe we'll aim towards
Sure.
it over time.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm just looking at Linus's question again because he was asking if it's viable to have the bindings. Yes, absolutely. But will you want them when Yakt is so sweet to write compared to JavaScript? I don't know. Uh, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Okay, here's a question from John saying, I've noticed that languages typically settle at a common speed across similar current devices. Where would you both aim to get Yakt in terms of performance compared to other languages? So I guess that's an interesting question. I guess the way I think of that is like how much performance penalty are you willing to pay for certain conveniences? Because that's sort of I don't know. It's such a complicated issue nowadays because the way that you get performance isn't necessarily just from like raw, um, like optimized code running on a single core, right? Like you get a lot of performance from parallelizing, or you get performance from offloading to GPU, and performance is often or typically about a lot more than just like language characteristics. Um,
I mean, in the small scale, you're doing trade-offs to say, so for example, in Yacht, you've got a reference counted class or just a struct that's like a value type. Well, if you don't need the reference counting and you just pick the struct, you're kind of making little choices in the language itself to say, okay, I'm going to use the thing that is maybe stack based, lighter weight, whatever it is. Um, so yeah, I think you can, as a developer, still make those trade offs when you're writing Yacht. You can say, oh, I want to lean towards performance. I don't need the extra, capabilities.
Yeah, true. And we'll also be introducing references eventually once we finish the self-hosted compiler so that it can build itself. That's one of those features that I've really been missing because it's kind of annoying to not be able to pass something by reference without turning it into a class. It's just, it's a bit silly. And that's obviously going to come with some static analysis requirement. We'll have to, prove statically that the reference sharing is safe. But the basic idea is we're going to do sort of a limited reference support at first, and only stuff that is perfectly safe will be allowed, and then we will iterate on that. But I think in general, like we'll have to let profiling drive performance work once we get to that point where it becomes a concern. But if I'm speaking from like a completely hunch-based rhetoric, I think we're looking to make basically the same trade-offs as Swift in terms of performance, I guess you could say. Like it's reference counted, and there's no stop the world GC or anything like that, but there's also not the sort of really perfect isolation of ownership like in Rust, where you can squeeze out more performance by giving the compiler more verbose annotations about lifetimes. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, here's a question for you from Jaja asking, "Hi JT, how was the experience going from reviewing an operating system to being one of the guests in office hours? Did you know? Did you know you
Sorry.
wanted to contribute to Serenity OS when you grew up before starting working with Yacht?"
That's right. When I was a little kid looking at Serenity. I mean, it's been, I think I mentioned in the monthly update that we did, not this one, but the previous one, saying that when I first reviewed Serenity, that's when Andreas and I started chatting and, kind of struck up a friendship. And we kind of knew in the back of our minds that at some point we would work on something together. Um, but it was like we didn't know what it was going to be. I mean, I've been doing programming language design stuff for, I don't know, 16 years or something like that. But it's not like at the time we weren't thinking, oh, Serenity definitely needs a programming language. Let's make one of those. Um, but more recently, and I'll let Andreas talk that, kind of say that part of the story. But more recently, it did seem like, oh, actually, that is a good idea. We should try that. And so,
Yeah, true, true. But it's also true that like throughout the whole of the last year, it feels like we've had like all of these ideas for collaborations we should do
true.
that just didn't go anywhere
Yeah, that's true.
yet. That didn't go anywhere yet. Um, and but this one seemed like so reasonable. But yeah, so I've talked about this before, but basically what happened was I just wanted to find a memory safe language for Serenity to try to bring memory safety to the system, because it was irritating me that we were building this big thing, but we didn't have safety. And it seemed sort of not right to invest this much time and ask other people to invest this much time into something that's lacking sort of, I guess what I would increasingly consider to be a requirement for software. And I tried a bunch of different languages, and I complained to JT about all of them until eventually, I guess that became too much. And JT just said, "Look,
Well, I mean,
let's just
we
make a
went
language, okay?"
through, yeah, we went through like all the serious contenders. I feel like you were very thorough and looking at each one and say, okay, what about this? Well, okay, it has these trade-offs. What about this one? Okay, different set of trade-offs, still not a good fit. And then when we finally got to the end, um, I was thinking, well, we know all the requirements now. We just talked through all the trade-offs for the last few weeks. So what if we just sat down and started banging out a design of a programming language that fit exactly the requirements that you spent the last few weeks coming up with? And so it went really fast after that. I feel like, I don't know what your experience was, but I don't normally sit down and design a full language in little less than a week. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
that
think as you
was
say, the sort of the discovery process where I was rejecting one language every couple of days, it really helped sort of decide what Yacht wanted to be. But it was interesting how fast it went. I was a bit impressed, I guess. But I think it turned out really cool. And I remember I brought up like creating a new language earlier on, and you were very skeptical.
Was I? That's funny.
Yeah, yeah,
I
you would.
think you just have to be like in the right headspace because it's a task. It's
Yeah,
definitely a task.
yeah, yeah, for sure it is. But like, I guess yeah, what changed your mind seems to have been just like getting a very clear picture of what we were trying to do, and then once you had that picture, it
Yeah.
was just a matter of churning out the parser and the
Yeah. I
and
feel like once I
yeah.
could start to see it, that's when I was like, okay, I'll pitch this thing. We'll compile to C++, we'll do this, we'll do that to kind of really streamline the process so we can actually see real code soon. Um, and then, like, we jumped in a call, you jumped in your car or something because it was so late at night. And for like 2 hours, we're like, okay. And then it does this, and then it does this. And yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, I remember I was trying to you were showing me in VS Code and I was like looking at my phone in the dark in the car, just trying to read what you were typing. But it
Good
worked out.
times. Good times.
Good times indeed. So, next question. Hey, JT, do you think it's important to have a master's or doctorate in programming language specifics to land a job as a PL developer?
Gosh. Hmm. There's a little to that. I hate to say it. And mostly because it is a way to get in the door a bit. So when I started working on my PhD, spoiler, I did not finish said PhD. I went off to go do things with it before I could finish it. But doing the PhD meant that I had an advisor who could help me learn a bunch of stuff extremely quickly. I had the advisor's connections. So he knew a bunch of people in the programming language industry and said, well, if you work on this project, you've got one possible in with, I didn't know it at the time, but I mean, clearly in hindsight. So Cray was working on a programming language. I was doing research on that language. When I applied for a summer internship, it's easy to get in the door. You do that once or twice, and all of a sudden your career path just goes from one thing, and then you're laser focusing on programming language at that point. So it does help for that reason. And of course, if you like formal programming language stuff, then academia is where you learn the formal stuff. Having said that, it's completely different in industry. When you do programming language design, it is not academic programming language design. Those are completely different things. In industry, you're trying to create a language that real people can use with real problems to solve. And academia, you're trying to push the edge of knowledge about what a programming language can describe or do, um, to see what the edge of possibility is. It's just a very different style. So yeah, that was probably more than you were asking for, but I think it is, it does open the door. You can do it without it, but I'd imagine it'd be something like you start contributing to LLVM or Clang, and you do that for a couple of years, and then you attract the attention of an Apple or a Google or one of those companies that are looking for active, high quality contributors to those projects.
Yeah. And I also, I mean, I didn't go to school, but I still do get the impression that just the breadth of knowledge that you gain um,
Yeah,
by pursuing an education like that is unlikely that you would come upon the same breadth, just from going your own way.
yeah, there's no way. I mean, something like types in programming languages, I flipped through pre grad school, which is like this tome. But in grad school, it's like, this is, one of the stack of books that you better have understood, top to bottom. And so I spent the time to, okay, I'm going to pull out my Haskell. I'm going to implement every single chapter so I understand every single feature. And then it started to make sense, right? But it was grad school that really gave me the space to sit and really soak in the more technical stuff so that, you can put it aside, but once you understand it, that's one of the tools in the toolbox that you can use later, which is really nice.
Yeah. All right. Here's an easy one from Planet 10 saying, well, hello there. Good to see you
Well,
all. Hope you're
hello.
doing good. Well, hello. I think we are doing good. Let's see. Here's one from Chihiro saying, what to do if you suddenly lost your passion for hacking on your own pet projects? I guess
Hmm.
it is because of my work where I write code for
Hmm.
money. Well, I've answered that question like 20 times on Office Hours, but you never did. So,
That's true. Um, I mean, of course, I think that energy can kind of wane and kind of swell and wane as you kind of go on to things. Hmm. I would say, like, let yourself rest. I feel like a lot of people, they just think, oh, their passion project has to always be that passion every day. But in truth, something that you really like, you still need your weekends. You still need some of those evenings to go to a movie or, you know, do something else. Um, because in those rest times, it's like your juices regenerate or your energy regenerates, and then you're like, oh, I have this idea, and it just starts nagging at you about that project, and then you eventually that little nagging idea becomes the next thing that you try, and then it creates a cycle of something like that. So just let yourself rest.
Yeah, and like guilt-free resting, you know?
Yes,
Because if you're
absolutely.
like if you feel like you should be working on something and then you're not doing it, then I almost feel like the guilt that you feel from that, it takes up all the energy you would have spent on the thing. So you're not getting the rest and you're also not doing anything either.
Yeah,
So you need to sort of let go and allow, as you say, like allow yourself to rest. If you don't feel like working on something, take a break.
yeah.
Um, I would say, like, personally, I'm kind of afraid of taking breaks sometimes because I worry that I will become too comfortable.
Hmm.
Um, but then, as you say, I always something starts nagging me. Like, even if I spent a whole day playing video games, at the end of the day, I just feel like, well, I really should go and refactor that thing. Or,
You start
um,
thinking about the one thing. Yeah,
yeah,
I would
yeah,
say too. I mean, talking about burnout is probably a whole topic unto itself. But learning what your body feels like as you begin to burn out of something is, I also think, really important, because when you feel it start, you know to back away so you don't lose that passion. If you let yourself get all the way into the point where your body is physically resisting you working because it needs to rest, you're already starting that part of burnout. You really don't want to do that for more than a day or two, because then it's like much longer to rejuvenate if that happens.
yeah. That's so true. Yeah, you don't want to push past that point of exhaustion
Yeah,
and like stay in that state. Uh,
just trust your body, like listen to what you can do, and work with that.
yeah, yeah. This reminds me of this video game Stardew Valley. I don't know. I don't know if you ever played
Yeah,
that.
that's right, you have to sleep at night. Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
sleep at night. Yeah, yeah. And then if you push yourself to exhaustion, even if you eat to get some energy back, you're still exhausted, and you
Yeah.
still suffer the next day. I like how they did that.
Yeah, you can tell the developer had a few long nights. Yep.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, it didn't occur to me that, of course, the guy who developed the game is a human programmer.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Three-dimensional flesh and blood.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's a bit like how there are so many movies about writers,
yeah.
like script writers trying to make it in Hollywood.
Uh,
Anyway,
anyway,
so Adler says, I see a lot of rust in Yacht. Is there an equivalent of lifetimes in Yacht? So, nope, not really. Not at the
cool.
moment. Lifetimes are all implicit, sort of just based on what your types are. So, there are value semantics and reference semantics, basically. So primitives and structs have value semantics, and classes have reference semantics, and that's as simple as it is right now. Um, in the future, we will probably, or we will definitely have to add some sort of lifetime tracking. Although, um, at least from my perspective, it's nice if that can all be implicit still, so that it's just something that the compiler figures out about the program instead of you having to explain it. Um, I'm not entirely sure if that will take us as far as we need to go, but I
I'm
suspect
not sure
that
either.
maybe. Um, it really comes down to, like, there's going to be there. My intuition says we're gonna come up to like a hard performance boundary where like you have to have a richer language to communicate with the compiler at some point if you want to express certain patterns that are in fact safe, but the compiler can't see that on its own. Um, but I
Yeah,
don't know if no. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm hoping that we get to kind of a really sweet 90 percentile. Like, sure, if you wanted to get like Rust levels of performance where you're just like eking out every single cycle by using all these lifetime annotations and getting exactly right. Okay, that's cool. That's Rust's sweet spot. But for Yacht, maybe the sweet spot is, yeah, lifetime inference, and then we don't let you genericize over lifetimes like you can in Rust, which, having just taught Rust for a few weeks, like, you can really see the complexities start to tick up, because to get that last 10%, you have to be in and ready to do the, wrestling the borrow checker, right? You have to do the real stuff. But you can get a far way before you get to that point. And in fact, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we wrote the Yakt compiler in Rust, I tried to avoid any explicit lifetimes so that everything would be very similar to probably how we would write the code in Yakt itself. So I think we'll be okay, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see.
I think so too. And yeah, I feel like that last 10% or whatever, this theoretical 10% of performance that you can get with more explicit data, like of course it's real, but I feel like it also only matters in a tiny amount of cases. And I'm not even sure that like the trade-off of complexity versus convenience is right.
Right. Right. I
And
mean, just thinking
yeah,
about like structs that have references in them, and in Rust, those structs have to have lifetime annotations on every one. Is it I mean, is it 10% better? Is it like 5% better? Like, I don't even know. And if you just have some reference counted thing instead of that reference, it's way simpler to program and to understand the model. So I
right. Yeah. And I guess also, I mean, I have limited experience with Rust, but it seems to me that um, the thing that you're getting with these explicit lifetime annotations is that you sort of prove to the compiler that it's safe what you're doing. But there's also always the escape hatch of unsafe, right? So that's sort of
Yeah, that doesn't let you really break it unless you go use raw pointers and then you're dereferencing and
right.
you're
That's what I
working
mean.
with it.
You can
Yeah,
do
yeah, you
that,
can do that. You can do
right?
that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
So that's something that's always available to us in Yacht, no
that's right.
matter how
That's right.
far we go with lifetimes. Is that
That's right.
for performance sensitive code, we will have unsafe as
Yeah.
a hack option. But it's really too early to tell. Like as you can see here from this conversation, like it's obviously we're just speculating. I think in 6 months we'll have much more real examples of how this works and what the issues are and what our ideas are for improving it. But we'll see when we get there. Let's see. Network exception says currently we have a few little custom languages like IPC and GML. Do you think that those might get integrated more tightly with Yacht, with Rust style custom lang macros and an API for emitting Yacht? Maybe.
Maybe. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I think why not? You know, um, I guess I'm initially like a little bit apprehensive to sort of pointing the language in 10 other directions at the same time. Like, hey, let's also support like widget tree description hierarchies or whatever. And let's also generate IPC in the compiler. But having some way to make that easy for ourselves seems very reasonable. And maybe the first step towards that is just having a nice API for the yakt parser, so that you can easily enumerate like all of the fields in a class that have a specific attribute and things like that. And then maybe you could just put an attribute on class members that you want to include in an IPC thingy, and then generate based off of that. I don't know exactly. It's hard with these sort of speculative questions about like, oh, do we think we might want to do that? Maybe.
Yeah. I think these kinds of things, I mean, it's like a cool idea, but we also need, like, what's our use case? because if we add a bunch of features and we don't have a really clear thing that we're trying to solve, then we won't know if we've solved anything.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I guess the examples brought up here, IPC and JML, those are like DSLs that exist currently
yeah,
in
yeah,
Serenity
yeah.
codebase, and we do generate, at least in the IPC case, we generate C++ classes based off of those. But it seems easiest to approach this initially, at least, by just generating yakt instead of generating C++. And um, and then if we think of a better way to integrate that with the core language, perhaps through extension attributes or something like that, then we can take that when we get there. Okay, here's Chihiro saying, also not a question, but I'm happy to see both Andreas and JT. Amazing. Indeed, indeed, it is amazing. It's actually been a long time since we spoke publicly together, I guess.
Was it the interview on my channel? Was that the last time?
Yeah, you interviewed me on your channel,
Yeah.
and but it doesn't feel like a long time ago because we talk so often
This is
outside of
true.
that. um, but yeah, I guess maybe we seem less awkward now. Like we've sort of learned to find the time to speak when the other one is ready and things like that. I feel like that's always hard to get into a rhythm with people, but over
Yeah.
time you kind of learn.
Especially since we've never met in person. Maybe we'll fix that at SerenityCon
Right.
2024 or whatever, but
Or YachtCon or NewCon.
YachtCon 2024.
Yeah, or I'll come by NewCon.
There you
Um, yeah. Let's see. Okay, so here's Linus asking, what did JT work on while being on the
go.
presumably TypeScript team?
Yeah, on the TypeScript team, I was the program manager. So I did a lot of different things. One of them was lead the TypeScript design team. I helped the design focus on what we needed for the users that we had at the time. And of course, that would grow. So I helped build the community and grow the user base. So it was kind of part technical, part community. Yeah.
All right. That's I guess this is my opportunity to interview you actually.
Uh-huh.
I should take the opportunity. So I know you worked on TypeScript,
Mm-hmm.
but did you also work on other languages? I know
Mm-hmm.
you worked on TypeScript and Rust professionally, but what
Mm-hmm.
other languages did you work on professionally?
Yeah. Okay. So I was part of the TypeScript team that created TypeScript, and then we grew that, and then I left after about 3.5 years. Before that, I worked on Clang and LLVM at Apple for a summer, and I worked on Chapel, another programming language, at Cray the summer before that. So each summer I was working on interesting programming languages, and then the third one was called Strata, and that became TypeScript. And so once I saw the potential, and this is back, it's kind of fun. Like back when TypeScript was first getting created, basically only a few of us believed in it. I mean, that sounds rough to say, and but it's true because you have this like idea of uh, you know, this little JavaScript plus plus could become something big, and yeah, but I stayed on because I was like, no, we're starting to get people use it. When people come back to us after they use it, they say this is awesome. So yeah, I stayed on and kind of went full time with that for a while. Worked on Rust. Did I do any other programming languages professionally? I think those were the main ones I did professionally. Yeah, I
It's
worked on
funny
Rust
what you
for a while.
say. It's funny what you say about TypeScript, how people didn't believe in it initially, because I saw just the other day on Twitter, you were sharing these posts about like how people love TypeScript, and it just
Yeah,
it just had this energy of like told you,
yeah.
you
I
know.
mean, I have that little, maybe a tiny chip on my shoulder about that, but I think it's also you can turn it around and have it be a good reminder that if, when I to this day, I remember when you first released TypeScript to the world, and we had like a stream of social media, like like Twitter or something on one window and something else in another window, and there's just like a stream of comments. And the percentage of negative comments was at least 50% of the comments were just like, dumbest idea ever. This is terrible. Why is Microsoft trying to kill JavaScript? This is stupid. It'll never work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what did we do? We just went to work the next day and kept going. And just, we knew it could work, and we just tried to prove out that it could work. And a lot of it, I think, too, not to go too far in the weeds, but when we first started designing it, we weren't entirely sure we had like all the right design points, but we let ourselves just learn from the feedback and just create a cycle of taking in the comments, seeing what the themes were that we need to fix those themes, rinse and repeat month after month after month. And then it did start to become something that people wanted to put in their kind of JavaScript toolbox and pick up more regularly. But it took a few years to get to that point. But sometimes you just got to believe in it until it's at that point.
Yeah, definitely. I only used TypeScript seriously for the first time when hacking on the IDE extension for Yacht, but it's just such a sensible idea, I think. Like you have this language that's like a little bit too dynamic, and then you just slap a
Yeah.
layer of static typing on top, and it's just clearly nice. And I feel like it's kind of an obvious parallel, but I feel like that's sort of what we're trying to do with Yacht as well at the moment, with C++ being like a little bit too permissive, perhaps. And then what we do is we just like put a little safety box on top of it, and suddenly it kind of neuters all the problems. But in the TypeScript case, I was just thinking, you're kind of what we're doing is we're introducing a lot of limitations, and I guess TypeScript doesn't necessarily limit you that much.
Right. Yeah, if you write valid JavaScript, it always works. Even if you get a compiler error, the compiler errors are more like warnings to say, hey, you broke the TypeScript rule, but it's still valid JavaScript. I'm letting it through. And that actually helped a lot of people adopt it, like try it out a little bit in a code base, and they might convert one file over to TypeScript. And, oh, that was pretty cool. And then they might convert two more, and then over time, it kind of worked. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt like I was probably stepping on a stereotype mine personally when I was using it, because it took me like 20 lines before I was casting to any.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just want to add a property to this thing. Stop asking me what it is, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, and but then somebody showed me how to do it properly, so that was nice. Anyway, let's see. Alex asking if we had disagreements about how a particular language construct should work or look like when designing Yacht.
No.
Disagreements.
Well, I think the way that Andreas and I work together is like we will pitch an idea at the other and say, "Oh, I think it should work like this," and the other person will kind of take it, look at it, say, "Well, in this case, maybe it hits a problem," and then we just kind of bounce the idea back and forth, polishing it as it goes, and then it's an idea. We're like, "Yeah, we're both happy with it now." We think we tend to have that style more than that's a stupid idea. How about this way? No, we don't. We don't do it
Yeah,
that way.
very much. And I really appreciate that about you. It makes it so easy to work that like we just take an idea, like whoever has an idea first, we'll just roll with that and then iterate on it. It makes it so much easier to develop stuff. I feel like, we're doing this for fun at the end of the day. We don't want to get stuck in discussions when we can be writing code.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's good to do the science too. Like we had, what was it? This? Yeah, we had this keyword first, and we started writing a bunch of code, and we said, "Holy moly, we see this everywhere." But we didn't want to
yeah.
go all the way to C++ and not require anything, because if you don't require anything, you don't know the difference between a field and a variable. So we didn't want to go that far. but we knew somewhere in the middle is where we wanted to land. So we tried, one thing, and nope, we don't like that. We tried something else, and we just let ourselves iterate until we clicked into a design where everyone's happy. And it's like, oh, that's good. All right, next, on to the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we never really had disagreements, I think. Just some things took more steps of iteration,
Yeah.
like the thing you described with the this, and we also had the issue with keyword length.
Yep.
Like we started out with some short keywords and then we made them long, but then they just started feeling way too long, so we shrunk them down again. And all of those things were informed by actually using the language. I feel like that was key. Like we built this environment where anybody making a complaint about the language and wanting to change it would have to ground that complaint in like actual use of the language. And it's such a big difference when somebody says, "Oh, I don't like the way this looks," versus, "Oh, well, I've just been writing 1,000 lines in this language, and it's so irritating how you have to."
Yeah. You take a big pen and you circle. Look at this pattern. This is ugly. And you're like, oh yeah,
Right.
yeah, we should fix that. Yep.
Yeah, and of course now I have a bunch of those circles in the language.
I know. We are,
Um,
like I was saying, I just came off teaching Rust for a few weeks. Once I get a gap again, I think the next thing we'll do is probably get together and do a little bit more design work to see if we can smooth out some of the rough edges.
yeah, yeah. There are a couple of big items still pending in the language, I feel like, that we need to look at, but we
Yeah.
do have enough to build a compiler. I'm confident in that, at least.
Yeah.
So
Like you said, we're over 40% of the passing test. I mean, once we hit 100%, it's as good as the Rust compiler. And then we
right.
just go from there.
All right, JT, do you wake this early every day?
Yeah, I do. 5 a.m. generally. Yep.
Wild. Okay, Dexus TTP says, "Hello, since Yacht is built for Serenity by Serenity, and that is an entire operating system, it feels like Yacht will cover almost all possible kinds of code. In your opinion, what kinds of use cases would not be included there?" Oh.
Mm. I mean, some of it's going to be a matter of time and degree. Like, we know you're not going to write the kernel in Yakt tomorrow. Like, it's
Mhm.
not ready design wise. It's definitely not ready to write kernel code.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can write like app code, and then maybe if we add a few more features, you can write more of the libraries in Yakt. And then over time, you may actually be able to do a full stack top to bottom. And at that point, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it has everything that it needs to do any kind of app development or any kind of development.
Yeah. It's really hard to try to imagine what we wouldn't support. But I guess you could say something like, "Well, we're probably not going to be writing web apps in Yacht anytime soon."
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it is meant to be a compiled systems language. So
Until we add that scripting language version that you just mentioned
that's
30 minutes
true.
ago.
Yes. Until we add that. But I think like everything that's in Serenity today is likely to become a target for Yacht eventually. But there will be a process of getting to that point, as JT was saying, where we sort of take the easier, higher level things first to flesh out the language. And I think it's okay for the kernel and the low level parts to wait until the end, because you want a mature language when doing low level stuff anyway. And by that point, the language will be mature. We'll have mature diagnostics, static analysis. People will be used to it. And we'll be in a position to actually do the low level stuff. That's my feeling.
Yeah. And I'm also looking forward not to sign up the folks working on your IDE, but having Yacht in the IDE will be really sweet too.
Oh, obviously we have to do that. I think like having poked at the language server stuff for the IDE extension in VS Code, it feels a bit like it would be nice if we supported the same protocol in our IDE so that we didn't have to have a separate language server, so we could have a single one. At the moment, we have our own language protocol or our own LSP, like totally different bespoke protocol. But yeah, I'll leave that one for the future. Let's see. Mati is asking, what kind of pizza are you? I'm a margarita.
I'm definitely one with pineapple on it.
Ooh. Well,
Them's fighting words.
Let's close that question before anything happens. Let's see. Ali. Hello, Ali. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Saying state serialization : says it was like half an hour ago or something.
Are we like really behind on the questions?
Yeah, this typically happens. I get far behind.
Funny.
Sorry about that. State serialization, we're already halfway there with compiler generated debug output. Not that hard to emit some binary format instead. Shruggity shrug. Yeah, that's true. We could definitely do that. I think with state serialization, you want to be a bit more deliberate because like you don't necessarily want to serialize every member of every object, you know?
You might want to rename. Yeah. There's different things
right.
you might want to do.
And you have like a big cache of something that you don't need to serialize your cache. But some kind of way to, I really feel like attributes is going to be interesting for this type of thing. If you could just annotate like a member with an attribute saying like, oh, this gets serialized. And then there's an auto-generated thing that just serializes all of those things and deserializes them.
That's what we do in Rust, and it's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, sometimes you have to sort of write some custom handling for certain things because you can't just materialize something purely from disk state. But yes.
Yeah. But like for the general case, just being able to annotate a little bit and being able to get multi-format, serialized, deserialized, it's really nice.
All right. Lofty saying, will you have to maintain the Rust compiler in order to allow people who have never built the compiler before to build it? No, we don't actually. What we can do is we can just generate the self-hosted compiler C++ and then put that into the repository, and then all you need is Clang. And at that point, we don't need the Rust-based compiler at all, and we can just keep it around as a historical artifact. And I think that's kind of sweet. The fact that we just get a bootstrap compiler in C++ as a sort of product of this whole thing. And that seems like a place that we're going to get to within a couple of weeks. So that's pretty interesting. Of course, like even when we can build it, we're still going to need some additional features for the IDE stuff. But actually, once feature complete, we're not going to need the Rust-based compiler, the RBC, anymore. Just inventing acronyms for things that will go away anyway.
Exactly.
Let's see. Oh, here's Seb saying that they just want to thank JT for the YT content and the expiring good mood and joy for exploring new things.
Thank you. Happy to do it.
Yeah. JT's channel is awesome YouTube content, I think. It's such a comfy thing. Like it just hits all of those notes. I feel like it's such a, I don't know. Maybe it just feels like it's made for me personally, because I love old operating systems and like seeing these random explorations. And it's totally stuff I would be doing myself if I couldn't just go on YouTube and watch somebody do them. Definitely. Shout out to JT's YouTube channel. Yeah, I gotta link it in the chat.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let me just find a link to it. And I hope you don't have autoplay because, yeah, okay, avoid it.
I try not to because it annoys me when people do autoplay on their channels. I'm
Yeah,
like, I
that's
don't
a
want. I'm not trying to be clicking on a video. I just want to know who you are.
yeah, but you got to milk those autoplay
I
views though.
know. Click the subscribe button.
Yes, smash that like button. I'm not saying that right. Got to
I
practice.
I know. I don't even say it in the videos because I'm just like, you know what? You know what to do if you want to do it. Like, just come hang out.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So let's see. We're still like half an hour behind, but Stefan was asking, did we notice things/patterns we would do differently now in the standard library due to starting
Ooh,
Yacht?
that's a cool question.
Hmm. So
Stefan's
one
one of
thing.
the
No, you
new
go ahead.
shell
Actually.
core. I was just gonna say Stefan's one of the new shell core folks,
Oh,
which is kind
cool.
of fun.
Yes. Welcome to the chat. Um, I guess a bunch of things I've noticed is error handling. That's something that we didn't take entirely seriously from the beginning in Serenity, and we've been retrofitting it, which has been, it was kind of a pain to finally find how we wanted to handle errors. And even at the point where we find, okay, so this is how we want to deal with errors, we want sort of value-based exceptions that can be returned and propagated. The syntax for that in C++ never really looked beautiful. It was sort of a best we can do kind of thing. And it's okay, but it's not perfect. And I feel like that's definitely something that we're approaching differently with Yakt, and just building that in from the very beginning, that you have to annotate how you are propagating errors, and everything, all the functions now tell you if they can throw an error or not. And we imported a part of the SerenityOS standard library into Yakt as sort of the initial runtime. And I've already had to change that runtime a whole bunch. So now it's incompatible with
That's right.
Serenity because
That's
it
right.
propagates errors everywhere. So that's going to be a little bit of a pain point when reintegrating Yakt with the Serenity standard library. And really, Serenity is just going to have to adapt to the Yakt way of doing things because it's the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to propagate errors instead of swallowing them or panicking if you get an error.
Right. I noticed the same thing was true for optional. Like at some point, we're going to have to move to the Yacht optional, which is going to
Right.
be a carry through all of the standard library. So I don't envy the people working on that part.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a pain. We'll see how that happens in practice. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I feel like we're probably going to be able to build little bridges as we go and then tear them down when they're no longer needed. It's going to be an incremental project. We do have a million lines to deal with, so we'll see. But yeah, that's definitely my main thing, is just error handling and just how pervasive it is, which you really start to notice if you force the user to annotate, right? If you force the user to specify where errors can happen, even allocation errors, then suddenly you get a lot of them.
Yeah, that was a surprising one to me. Once you could see where your allocations are, because you may run out of memory, and you need to
Right.
be able to gracefully handle it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it is kind of interesting because we're building the compiler now, the self-host compiler, and it's not like we do anything meaningful if we run out of memory. We're just going to fail. Just I guess what we can do is we can fail with a little bit of a nicer message, and we can dump out what state we had up to that point, make some kind of decision like that in the end. I do feel that we'll be able to fail more gracefully, even in a compiler. So we'll see what we do with that eventually. Let's see. Chole? Chole?
chole batra. That's one of my favorite foods in the whole world.
Oh, cool.
It's
I don't know what that
it's
is.
like it's kind of spicy chickpeas, and then You eat it with a fried bread. It's chef's kiss. Good
All
stuff.
right. That does sound good. They're saying that they noticed in the Yacht compiler that the whole source code is read into memory. With large file, the compiler would consume a lot of memory. Have you considered M-mapping large files? This is what LLVM does.
Yeah, at some point if you haven't gotten the vibe, we've got very much a sense of we will solve the next problem and then we'll wait for the following one to happen and then we'll solve it when it happens. So we're not at the point yet where we've got a really large project. I think the self-host compiler is probably somewhere between 10 to 30,000 lines of yakt code at this point. Maybe not quite that large. It's somewhere in that range.
Yeah, somebody will fact check that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's probably actually less than 10,000, but it's getting close to that line. But that's still going to comfortably fit into memory until
Oh,
we
for
get
sure.
like, a million lines of code. Okay, yeah, we should probably be careful about how much we're pulling in.
Yeah. It was interesting. We hit sort of the human limit for how big of a file you want to deal with
Yes.
um,
Oh,
with the
and
self-host compiler.
right. And then that forced us to add a kind of a module system and multi-file support
Yeah,
but we were just going to put it off until we hit the limit. And we're like, okay, no, this is annoying to work on. It's time to add it.
right. And I feel like the same approach works for stuff like this, where there's a theoretical performance issue if you have a huge file, but let's just ignore that until we have a huge file. I guess that's sort of how I feel about it. I think trying to get out in front of theoretical performance issues is not my preferred workflow. Like I like to work with whatever problems I'm currently having and are able to measure. And if one problem turns out to be, hey, wait a minute, we're reading 1 byte at a time from the file and that's killing us, of course let's fix that. But until I see it in a profile, I'm not super worried about anything in particular. I try to have sort of systematic way of thinking about performance issues, I guess. It's like the you can't manage what you can't measure, but for programming. Let's see. Lofty was asking, we've mentioned having a REPL version of Yacht a couple of times. Has any progress been made on this, or is it stalled by feature freeze? No progress. Probably stalled by feature freeze, yeah, because you would need to have sort of
Like a
a
full
variant
interpreter. Yeah.
interpreter, yeah, right. And we can do that eventually, but it's not something that I want to start messing with right now because we're still figuring a lot of architectural things out. Let's see. Thomas Q says, if all classes in Yacht are reference counted, won't that get you into trouble when you go multi-threaded? Or is the reference count implementation already thread safe? It is definitely a concern. At the moment, we don't even do atomic reference counts because we assume single threaded. In the future, we will obviously want to support multi-threaded execution, but I don't yet know what form that will take. There are a couple of different options, of course. And in keeping with the aforementioned desire to avoid cumbersome lifetime annotations and things like that, I feel like I would like to look for something that is just naturally safe, like an actor model or something like that, where you can spawn sort of a actor/worker and send data to it, have it send data back across some kind of a queue. And there are no unsafe sharing points, but it's just a huge design space that we haven't broached at all. Even really like conversationally, we haven't really talked about it much.
If people are interested in those kind of things, I have a video on my channel about a project I did many, many years ago. Yeah.
That also transpiled to C++.
Yeah, that also transpiled to C++. Yeah, it's called Minnow, Minnow. if folks are
Indeed.
curious. That'd be
See,
fun to mix some of those ideas into something.
yeah, see, now is when you post a link in the chat, if you have
Yeah.
it.
Of course,
Too
this
much.
question was asked like an hour ago. They're
Oh,
probably
yeah.
long, but
That's true, but for the rerun, let me
okay.
go ahead and find it. A highly parallel language.
There you go. You found it already.
Yes. Did that sound come through to you?
The highly parallel language.
Uh-huh.
I heard that.
Oh, you heard that? Okay, well, anyway, there it is in the chat.
Oh, cool.
Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, here's something simple. Are yakt text strings terminated with a null byte? Are they transpiled to arrays of bytes or 22C? My parser is failing on the last part, but yes, they are terminated with a null byte. We're using it's based on the Serenity string type, which is sort of a byte storage, but it does you the favor of ensuring that there is always a null byte at the end, even if you don't provide one when you initialize the string. We always put one there for you in case you go ahead and pass it to a C API or something that's expecting it, just as a courtesy. So there's a courtesy null byte that is not a part of the length of the string. Let's see. Network exception said a year ago. So let me recap. Yakt was the result of the ultimate lang jam. I guess you
Pretty
could say
much.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. Speaking of lang jams, if
Ooh.
people are interested in programming languages, you might have to dig up the link because now I have to go find
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I'll get it out
They,
there.
there's a lang jam coming up. So I run a lang jam. There's like maybe a couple times a year. It seems like this will be number 3. And yeah, that's coming up in a few weeks. If people want to spend a weekend working on a programming language and just want to scratch that itch, by all means, come along and join the jam. It'll be a lot of fun.
Cool. Yes, definitely do that. Okay, let's see. I just clicked on new comments and it took me to the bottom. So let's just.
Oh no!
I just got to scroll back a little bit.
I think 6:31 a.m. was. Oh, well, that's my time. I don't know. Your time would be like 8:31.
Oh, I did get some super chat. Thank you, Daniel, for the super chat. I think that's a super chat. Appreciate that. And also, Daniel joining the Golden Yak herd. Enjoy your
Nice.
Golden Yak emote. All right. Let's see. Here's for you from Christian saying, this goes to JT. Makes me happy you worked on a lot of compilers, but how can someone start when he/she is developer but wants to transition to low-level stuff like compilers?
I mean, open source is a great door. Being able to start contributing on a project and just learn some of the basics, like fix simple bugs at first and just understand how to go into a code base like that, fix a simple bug, and start listening to how design works around you. And over time, you'll start absorbing that material. So yeah, I would just say it's going to take putting the time in. There's always like textbooks that you can get. So like the Dragon book, if you Google the Dragon book and compilers, you'll get a classic textbook and compilers. So you can pick that up if you want to fill out like your understanding of how a compiler works. That's a good one.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, after us building a compiler, I can definitely recommend just making a little toy compiler for a toy
Yeah.
language as
Yep.
a very healthy exercise, just to sort of get your head around how large the task really is. Because before we did one, I imagined it was much more work. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think give yourself, yeah, if you got the free time, creating lots of little languages with a different feature set, and then you can kind of see what this feature looks like or what this one looks like. That's a really good way to practice because it gets you faster at creating them. You get you looking at a feature as it relates to other features, because a lot of the a lot of the skill in programming languages comes from understanding how this feature will interact with this one, will interact with this one when you actually write the code. And having a lot of practice with a lot of different features will help with that.
Yeah, and make sure you join up for LangJam.
Yeah, come join the Ling Jam. That'd be fun too.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Oh, here's a good question from My Name, saying a couple of hours ago you mentioned that you wanted to get together again to do more design work. How do you deal with design ideas and opinions from the rest of the community? So basically, we just talk on Discord about random stuff, but I've been a bit hard on people and just to make sure that people don't just come on there to talk endlessly about ideas, but instead sort of back them up with code, because it's very, very difficult to have any kind of productive discussion if people are just there to discuss, but not willing to actually put any effort into implementing what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
Especially
but
this early on, we don't want people
yeah,
coming in and what they call licking the cookie, where you you can imagine like the kid coming in, reaching into the cookie jar and like looking at putting it back in, right?
right. No, picture is clear. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're coming along and you start describing an idea and a particular design, and we're like, that sounds great, and then you never implement it, it's going to slow everybody down. So we want people that are in the conversation being the ones actively doing PRs and actively helping sculpt the language and get it in a way that makes sense for everybody working Serenity.
Right. Yeah. And it's really the same exact development model we have in Serenity, where we just discourage what we call idea guying, where people come in and just talk about their great ideas that they have, but they don't work on them. We just say that's not something that we want in our community because it sort of takes up everybody's time and doesn't produce any code. So that just comes along over to Yakt, and it was a little bit of an issue early on, I feel like, because a lot of people sort of joined the community not familiar with Serenity and our development practices, and then it took a moment before that sort of caught on in Yakt as well. But basically, everybody's welcome to participate in developing the language and in designing the language. All that we ask is that you participate actively by like actually working on the code. Like I was saying earlier about some of the design changes and iterations that we've gone through, they were all informed by like, oh, I used the language, I wrote a couple of hundred lines, and now I find this thing irritating. Let's change it. We want sort of that type of motivation behind changes instead of, well, this other language has this syntax and I think that's cool, so we should implement that.
In fact, if people feel maybe even a little bit intimidated about jumping in and working on the compiler, don't feel like you have to come in and work on the self-host compiler. If you have something else you want to try writing in Yacht, like I want to write a little command line utility, something like this, by all means. I think at this point, we're really in the state where if people are actively building things in a language and giving feedback based on actually using it, that's just as valuable. And just want to throw that out there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. And if somebody were to, like, if you were to take anything in Serenity and try to implement it in Yakt and see what you find, that's super interesting, right? And because that's ultimately what we're going to want to do with this. So if anybody wants to sort of scout ahead and try to build whatever command line utility from the system or anything like that and see what happens, that's super valuable. So as JT says, you don't have to work on the self-host compiler right now. There's all kinds of other stuff you can do as well. I mean, it is a little bit limited, let's be honest. But
you'll definitely hit limitations, but then maybe you'll be motivated to help flesh out where it needs to have new functionality.
Yeah. And the scope of all of this will grow rapidly, and it's really going to unclog once we get the self-host compiler finished. But that was a good question, by the way. Thank you, my name, for bringing that up. I hope I didn't sound too sour about this. I really want everybody to participate if they want to work on it. I just I have a particularly strong feeling about um, that people should work on. People should discuss things that they're working on, not
Yeah.
try to tell other people what to do.
Yeah. Come
Because
work with us.
yes, come work with us. Thank you. That's really well said. All right. Let's see. Krister says, without mentioning the Forsaken P word.
What's the P word?
I don't know. My inference is failing here. What's the P word?
Can I hover over that and get the P word? I don't know what the P
I'm
word
trying. Nothing happens.
is. Okay. Maybe we'll get it if we read the rest of it.
Do you two have any feelings if Yacht compile its own code rather than transpiling if the project works out? What is the P word?
No. Maybe in like 3 questions we'll both go, oh, of course, obviously it's this.
P word.
I don't know. Do you have any feelings if yacht compile its own code rather than transpiling? I mean, oh, planning.
Planning. Yeah. What's the plan?
Right.
The P word.
Yeah, I
That
think
makes so much sense now.
we kind of touched on this earlier. Yacht will probably compile its own code at some point in the future when it's well and good and stable. But
Right.
it's way more important right now to be flexible and being able to change, like we did, oh, a new syntax change, and just rip through all the yacht code, change everything and check it in and be that flexible rather than having to worry about anything else.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's really just a matter of time, and not putting up unnecessary complications for ourselves right now. Because, as we said earlier, trying to generate code right now would just slow us down so much. All right, let's see. Oh, fact check as previously requested. Ali saying correct range, just barely 10,328 lines with comments
Yeah,
and white
good
space.
guess.
That was a sweet guess. You are some kind of winner here, I think. See, I thought you were going to be way off. Like, oh, it's actually 5K. My goodness.
That's right. Pretty soon you won't be able to say I haven't written 100,000 lines in the language anymore.
True. But I still have some way to go. Let's see. Bobias says, unlike most projects, there isn't really some huge master plan. Unless something is actively being worked on, there's probably no plans one way or another. That's right. That also comes across from Serenity to Yacht. Although I guess Yacht has more of a plan than Serenity does. Let's be honest, because there's just the path is just kind of clear, right? We know where we want to go. But I didn't try to make a plan. It's just obvious. Okay, so sorry.
We know the rough direction. We know all the details. We don't know how to get there, but we know the rough direction we want to go.
Yeah. Let's see. Sophia says, cool. I had no idea lang jams were a thing. See, we got you a new signer-upper.
Nice.
Very nice. Ali says, hey, want to leak the next lang jam topic exclusively for the very lucky viewers of this stream?
Never.
So you heard it here first. The topic's going to be haha never.
I think I put in the announcement, and the next topic is just kidding. And then people are like, so what's a just kidding language like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. Orta says, Yak looks super cool. Been following along on the Twitters. Yeah. I mean, we're obviously biased, but there have been like a fair number of messages between you and me, JT, that are just like, hey, isn't this language so sweet? I know, totally. Right?
Just I like finally stopped sending it because I was like, I keep repeating this every time I wake up and write code. I should just stop. But yeah, for a while there, we would just wake up. You'd write some code, and you need to step back and go, wait a second, I actually like this.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
cool. So
And also, like, sometimes there would be like a screenshot of Yacht and Rust side by side, or Yacht and C++ side by side, and
yeah.
just, hey, doesn't the Yacht look real nice?
And it's no knock against those languages. It's just, when
No,
you
no,
have a
it's just
language
Yacht
fit
is
for purpose, it's like, yeah,
exactly, exactly. Yeah, I have nothing against those languages. They're just, it's just when you make a language tailor-made for a specific thing, it's hard to compete with that in a general language.
yeah.
Um, and it's very cool, I guess. All right, Jason says, JT, will you join other project after the Yacht compiler is stable and can be used for writing apps in Serenity?
Ooh, that's a yak bait right there.
It's a little bit of a
Maybe.
loaded question.
Yeah. Let's take a little step at a time. I will be sorely tempted though to write some apps in Yacht for Serenity once Yacht is ready for that.
Yeah,
Because
I know
using
you
the
have
languages,
a yeah,
yeah,
I
I
know you
do
have
have
an
an
app in
idea.
mind.
Yeah, yeah. I was trying not to leak that. Yeah, I do have an idea, but um, yeah, at some point, Yacht will be ready to be writing apps, and Yacht is fun to write. So that's a nice combination.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so good job not leaking. We'll see how that goes. Graham says, I want to contribute, but I only program in Python, but I feel I'd be more inclined to learn Yacht rather than C++.
Perfect.
Perfect. And this is also a great example of something that came up in a couple of previous office hours where some people were asking me, do I think that people will be less likely to want to work on Serenity if that means they have to learn Yacht? And I've been saying that if we do our job right with Yacht, then they will be more likely to want to learn because it will be a lot easier. Um, and I really think that somebody who's comfortable with Python or JavaScript or TypeScript, let's say, um, I feel like they should be able to pick up Yacht really quickly. And C++ is a weird thing because I don't think anybody really considers themselves an expert at C++. Um,
Even
but
I don't even think Jason ever says it out loud. I tell him he's an expert, but incidentally, Jason, my cousin, Jason
right, yeah,
Turner,
yeah,
is like a worldwide famous C++ trainer. And, he's been working extremely hard at it for many, many years. Um, so, yeah,
yeah,
we definitely wanted a language that, regardless of the background in programming, and even potentially be your first programming language, though we didn't really explicitly come out and say that. We just wanted something that was really easy to use and really friendly. But it has pieces of other programming languages in it, so that, say you come from C++, you come from Rust, you come from Python, you come from a bunch of different ones, you'll see familiar ground, and hopefully it's just a little extra work, and then in a weekend or so of playing with it, you're like, oh yeah, got it, I'm good. um, One of the things I really liked about Go when I first started playing with Go was that I sat down, and then a few hours later, I was already, productive enough to write a small application. And I would love for Yacht to be at that level. You've got the docs open, got the code editor open, and you do a hello world. And then 30 minutes later, you're saying, well, what if I add this? What if I add that? And you're already comfortable enough to be doing that, and it's starting to work. That's great.
yeah, indeed. And got a whole bunch of people telling us the P word here.
Thanks. We got it. We got it.
Yeah, yeah. Look at
Chat, don't
this.
tell. I wanted to figure it out.
Well, see, we figured it out. Although
It
JT
took
figured
us
it
a
out.
minute.
Yeah, JT figured it out before I did. Was shameful.
Oh,
Anyway,
goodness.
uh, let's see. Jeja was saying my fine Kiwi question ignored.
Oh, what
I
question was it?
I didn't mean to do that. I just skipped past a whole bunch of questions with a sloppy button press. It was easier on the old streaming platform to see what questions were skipped intentionally and what questions was accidentally missed. So um, that's I would say that's only half true because I very often would skip things accidentally, not intentionally, even when you could see them on the screen, because believe it or not, it is slightly difficult to read questions while talking and trying to answer something sensible at the same time. Um, but yeah, I do actually miss the way that you could see messages. Like if I just stream my whole screen, then you can sort of see the chat on screen at the same time. But StreamYard doesn't let me put it on screen. There's probably some way to do that, of course.
It might
But
be. Yeah.
um, like I
I
could
think it
even
was
make.
at 8:45 if you want to go dig it up.
All right, we can do that. 8:45. Oh, that's like years ago. Here we go. All right.
There we go.
JT, from the outside, it seems like Aussies and Kiwis poking fun at each other often. Is it a real thing? It seems a little more passionate than normal neighboring countries joking about each other.
No. No, they just poke fun.
Hmm.
I mean, I used to live in Virginia and we would make fun of West Virginia and they would do the same to us. It's like, what are you going to do? It's just good-hearted ribbing, I guess.
Are those separate
Just
states?
yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. Well, does Sweden do that for like
For West
other
Sweden?
or for
Uh,
like Norway or
right, West Sweden.
Denmark or whatever?
Sure, yeah, we definitely. I mean, there's a neighborly, brotherly thing going on, right? Um, but it's like if somebody outside would pick on Norway, then we're gonna stand up for Norway,
Of course.
obviously.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because they're our brother, we get to pick on them,
Right.
but you don't. But yes, we definitely have all those things. I think everybody does. I'm sure that Americans as a whole pick on Canadians
Mm-hmm.
as well.
A little bit.
Um,
Well, I would say an American instantly knows if it's a Canadian talking once they hit a certain vowel, and it's like, oh, they're Canadian.
I know what you're referring to. Yeah. All right, let's teleport to the bottom again. Oh my goodness. Sufi Bros says, Andreas, do you still play the tuba? I never played the tuba, actually. I just
I was like, what?
I post with a picture. I post in a picture with a tuba once, and
Nice.
I used it as my, I think, GitHub profile picture many years ago, and then somebody found it. And since then, I've been getting occasional questions about tuba lifestyle. All right. Barbecue asks, since Yacht is created in-house, what is the balance between making libraries and language features, as in add more built-in types or the like, versus libraries? So I guess the sky is the limit here. It's something that we haven't really explored much beyond making nice syntax for some of the primitives like strings, dictionaries, arrays, and sets. But I don't know if we would want to have like language specific syntax for many other things. It seems to me that you get pretty far with those. But I guess it
Yeah.
kind of touches on the same thing that was asked earlier about like integrating GUI markup languages and IPC definition stuff like that. Um, I don't know what you think, JT, but it seems to me that like having a relatively small language seems just easier to reason about.
Yeah. That's one thing. And part of the reason we kind of push back on people having a lot of ideas is that you, like I was saying earlier, you really want to take what you have and put it out in the wild and make it do its work. That's when you'll actually see patterns and practices show up. Like what is yacht best practice? Who knows? We haven't got to that point yet. But after we write 100,000 lines of code, we're going to start seeing some best practices. And then we can say, oh, there feels like kind of a gap right here. We keep writing the same pattern, or we keep trying to describe this thing and we see it crop up again and again. Okay. All right. So maybe that's a good place where we instill that in the language. and then from there, anyone can use it. I mean, one of the nice things, I guess it's always a trade-off. When it's in the language, it encourages everyone to kind of lean in that direction. In something like Rust, this means we lean you in good performance at, with a bit of practice, but it kind of leans you in that direction. You're more stack based. You're kind of focused in that way. So when we're adding a new language feature, there's kind of in the back of your mind, you want to be like leaning people in doing a better way of coding as much as possible. So we have to see what that is. And the other way to do that is to practice with it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think being attached to Serenity just by design, it is a fact that we do control the whole standard library stack as well for the target platform. But I still want the language to function independent of that. So that it continues to work on Windows, Linux, and Mac like it does today. So it seems unlikely to me that we would make the language like rely on Serenity as a target. But I guess I will say, if you want to look at something like C++ and Rust, how they deal with standard library versus language stuff, like what is in the standard library versus what is in the language, one of my things that I don't love about C++ is that they keep adding things to the standard library that I don't need. And I'm just not a user of STL for any of my projects. And it always seems like, okay, well, this, like a lot of complexity that goes into the language and into the compilers is spent on something that gives me no benefit. And I wonder what lesson we can take from that in Yacht. Or maybe there isn't a lesson because we control the whole standard library here. And then you can look at Rust, where it's like super distributed, right? Like everything's a crate. And there are pros and cons to that as well. You have tons of implementations and sometimes multiple independent implementations of the same functionality, and it's easy to mix and match, but like there's a huge quality discrepancy between arbitrary components, and you have no visibility into like if you depend on 20 different components, you don't know which ones are well architected versus which ones are a weekend hack that just fill the gap. And I feel like in C++, like if you get STL or Boost or something like that, it's more even.
Yeah. I think one of the things that when we were putting Yak together, you already had all these data structures. So it was kind of natural to say, oh, let's just make data structure for a hash table, because sitting right here, we have a dictionary class that we can use. Oh, we have a set. So someone adds, set syntax. It's just like,
yeah, exactly.
well, that's a nice advantage of having a standard library that's already sitting there that we can just lean on. It's like, okay, well, this slice of it can all be syntax. And then I think when we started doing that, we were like, okay, we can only do this for so long, and then we'll run out of syntax.
Yep.
But when you're using it, it's like, oh, we can't have nice things. We can just have a really simple hash table syntax, little dictionary syntax, and it's really clean. It's really easy to use. That's like, oh, why not? Why not give ourselves nice things?
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. Somebody says, "Lol, Jason Turner is your cousin." It's true. I've heard you talking to each other, so it sounded real.
Yep. And if you need any confirmation, I interview him on my channel too. I think he was the first person I interviewed.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Ooh, Kurt Tornado says, thoughts on macros in Yacht? Are you preferring C style Control C, Control V preprocessor macros? No. Or Rust's more complicated hygienic macros? Maybe also no. Or maybe something else. I don't know. I don't know what I like here.
I'm kind of resistant to macros, so I'm going to wait until we absolutely need them before we start adding
That's how I feel too. I'd like it if we didn't need macros. But I don't know what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, we'll see. I
Yeah.
mean, macros add a lot of complexity to compilation, readability of the language goes down, being able to build easy IDE support goes down. Like it's a big trade-off to kind of pick up macros and add it to a language. So I think we should hold off for now until we absolutely need them.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of like, why do I use macros? And 99% of the time, it's because, well, the language doesn't let me express this any other way. So I
Right.
just have to
Right.
use a
Right.
macro. And that excuse doesn't have to work here. Like, okay, if this is something I really want to do so often that I would do it with a macro, let's see if we can find a way to express it, right?
Yep.
Let's see. Paul says, JT, how many programming languages can you speak?
Dozens. I mean, that's all I did for years was just learn one after another. Not that I'm good at them. I wanted to be able to understand different types of programming languages so that I could make my own. So I like learned a bunch of functional languages, learned a bunch of other kinds of languages, even like more esoteric stuff. But yeah, these days I just like working on normal things that people would use.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you mentioned this academic background where in academia you end up working on like the sort of the cutting edge of what a programming language can be, what it can express and all that. And then you go out into the industry and it's sort of like, I don't know, like more down to earth.
Mhm.
Like these are the problems we're trying to solve and
Yeah.
what kind of
Here's
tools can we make?
here's the millions of developers we're trying to reach. Let's get something that makes their job easier. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's probably what sold me. Knowing between the two of them, and then going to a conference and meeting people that come up to you and say, "So the thing that you did, the thing that you were working on, makes my life easier." It's like, yo, I do real things. I'm not in a bubble in an imaginary world. Things I do impact the world,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
fantastic.
that's yeah, that's something you carry with you.
Let's see. Ali is lamenting something here, saying built-in types. Uh I'm still annoyed.
I
I'm
can
s-
I can like hear it in my head.
I'm still annoyed I didn't get rid of the built-in string type before the feature freeze.
You have time after. We might
Yeah,
still make some adjustments.
I'm not completely sure what this means.
I think I think Ali might be referring to, we assume that when you write hello in quotes, you mean a full-blown heap allocated string rather than what Rust would call a string slice that would sit as a constant in your binary, which is more efficient and doesn't, you know, allocate and everything.
Oh yeah, right. I would
We can
like
still
that.
add the string constants later. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right. We should add those eventually. And if they work implicitly, they could even be added to the self-host compiler now, right? Because the tests would still pass if they were implicit. But
If
okay,
by
I take that
now
back.
you mean after we pass all the tests, then yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant. That's exactly what I meant. Thank you for clarifying. Almost derailed myself there. Let's see. Adler says, reading through Yacht code the other day, I saw a string builder that wasn't declared anywhere. Is this part of the language prelude? Why not importing a standard library or something like that? I think it is part of the language prelude, if I
It
recall.
isn't yet. It's not. It's just in one of the tests.
Is this really
Unless we
true?
added it recently. If we added it
I
recently, maybe it's
don't
not
know.
there. But I definitely add it. I think it would be nice to put it in the prelude. We'll see.
I think it's in there. I'm
Okay.
gonna,
I could be wrong. Someone has to fact check me.
yeah, I'm trying to fact check right now, but I
I
am
assume
not.
at this point we've added it because without it, oh, we do codegen with plus equals, don't we?
It's
We
in
just
there.
say
Yeah,
string plus equals, string plus equals. It is in there. Okay.
yeah, it is in there. Yeah, I know the string plus equals is contentious as well. But I had this idea for that those could even turn into a string builder behind the scenes if we wanted to. So like making a string and plus equalsing it would be efficient behind the scenes. Like currently it's not efficient because we allocate like a perfectly sized new string every step of the way. Like there's no padded buffer. So every append is a reallocation. That could definitely be improved. But it's one of those things where it's like, if it's not a real performance issue hitting us at the moment, let's just postpone dealing with it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Jeja says, JT, do you use Serenity OS? What is your favorite feature? We need at least one question about Serenity in office hours.
I do play with it probably every. I try not to do it too much because I want to be surprised when I do the yearly video at Christmas time, which is now 2 years running. I guess it's a tradition. So probably I'll do another one for Christmas this year. But yeah, I try not to look at it too much because I want it to be fresh, but I also, curiosity gets the best of me. So I might compile it once or twice a year and pull up and see, oh, this looks cool. And of course, when Andreas comes up with a video, it's like, well, I might skim through this just to see what they're working on because I'm just curious. But yeah, I like being surprised too.
Yeah, although I suspect if you start working on your secret project in Yacht for
I'll see it all the
Serenity,
time. Yeah,
then you'll see it all the time.
for
Yeah.
sure.
But you should let us know if you're going to make a Christmas video so that we can put together a Christmas edition.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Somehow.
Christmas JT edition of Serenity.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Leorian says, I find it hilarious that one of the selling points of C versus Pascal was that with macros, virtually any Pascal program could be turned into a valid C program.
Did they really use that as a selling point? That sounds scary. I mean, it's probably true.
It's probably true, yeah. Right.
But yikes. And I'm sure Niklaus Spirit would just be shivering at that. He is such a purist about how clean the language should be and how it should feel to use. I can't. I think he would cry reading this.
Yeah. Oh man, I got one of my first programming jobs was converting a Pascal application to C++, and I didn't really know Pascal and I barely knew C++, but I got the job through nepotism. So
Right. Was it like your dad or something?
yeah. Like basically overselling my abilities. Like, yeah, my son can do that. He's good with computers. Right. But I ended up figuring it out well enough that they accepted it as work performed. So that was cool. But I don't know. Nothing about Pascal struck me as something I would miss today. I don't know. But
that's fair. I feel like it was kind of a product of its time.
Yeah, exactly.
But things like Modula 2, those ideas made it into other languages. So even if we're not necessarily using Pascal or using Modula, using Oberon, maybe Oberon a little bit less, that was more niche. But Modula ideas did kind of make their way into things like Java later on.
Yeah, I think I'm just ignorant because I didn't use these things enough in the time when they were contemporary, which I think would probably be.
Yeah, they're kind of before my time too.
Yeah, it's hard to appreciate these things retrospectively, even if you apply yourself and try to do it. Let's see, Paul says, JT, how old/young were you when you first got serious about languages?
Does give away my age? So I've been doing programming language design since 2006. And before then, I mean, Jason and Turner is actually who got me into programming when I was like 6 or 7 or 8 years old, something like that. It's been a long time.
Indeed. Oh my goodness, we actually reached the bottom of the chat.
Boom, boom, boom. How
Nice.
did we do that?
I think it's there's a high probability that I just accidentally skipped past a bunch of stuff. I don't know. It's this UI on StreamYard is nice and it's handy, but I confuse myself sometimes with
I did
these
see one
things.
comment about if we ever wrote a book about systems programming, it would be awesome. And I was thinking,
Oh,
wow, that would be a cool idea later on. That'd be fun.
yeah, that could be a book about yacht, I guess.
Right. Systems
Yeah,
programming in yacht.
we just need the right animal
That's
portrait
right.
for the cover.
Oh my goodness.
With the right animal portrait, we'll do it.
uh, so, oh yeah, you haven't talked about all the puns that are in yacht. Yeah.
All the puns? Yeah.
Yeah, in the word.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotta.
Kyle's got one of them.
That's true. Let's see. Adler says, Andreas, any videos of hacking with Yakt coming up? Yes, most likely. It is really warm right now, so not thrilled about recording, but
How warm is it in Sweden now?
well, it feels like 100, but it's probably way less. I'm just
Wait,
being
don't
a
give me
little.
Fahrenheit. That's weird.
No, I mean Celsius.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, where I'm, completely
No,
liquefied.
no, it's not actually very bad. It's like 20 degrees Celsius in the daytime. I'm just being a little crybaby about it because I don't like the heat.
That's all right. I had to get a little heater because I would try to code in the morning and my fingers would be so cold because it's like 0 or 3 here. It's like, okay, that's too cold to try to code in.
Yeah, I mean, it's Sweden gets warm for like a couple of weeks every year, and those are my least favorite weeks of the year, and then it's over quickly. So it's
Right,
all good.
right.
But yes, definitely hacking videos gonna come up. Probably about the self-hosted compiler because that's the main thing I'm working on. And maybe once JT is finished with teaching and things like that, then
That'll be a good chance of doing some videos on that too, for sure.
yeah,
Especially if I get in that secret project, I might just quietly record myself working on it. And then when I announce, I might just start releasing the videos showing you how it got there. Who
yeah,
knows?
indeed. Let's see. Oh, here's some info. Leo Rain says 31 in my Swedish room, 21 outside.
Yeah.
Tommy says 30-ish in my apartment. Yeah, I think that's the same apartment temperature I have going on here. I was just reading the outside temperature on my phone. I'd say it's about 30. I also echo the sentiment. I wish I had air conditioning. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of need the aircon.
I have some implements, but they're all loud. So it's just like not compatible with streaming because then you would hear the fans. And Kyle bragging with 34 in Texas. Well, you got it worst, Kyle. That is warm. That's obnoxiously warm. Let's see.
It's a
Almond was
secret
asking.
project. Go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, let's just take this one first. Why is Yacht written in Rust and not C++? That's because of JT. JT said,
Yep.
"Can we do it in Rust, please?" And I said, "Sure."
My C++, I used to write C++ professionally, but it's many years ago. And I was like, I could go so much faster in Rust.
Yeah.
And since I was the one that was going to be laying out what the structure of the compiler was going to be like, just kind of to start with, it's like I can tear this out if I'm doing it in Rust. I can just bang it out in a day or two and get our structure in place. And so we'll just do it that way.
Yeah, and I'm happy that we made it that way because it ended up teaching me a lot more about Rust and just learning patterns and stuff that I wouldn't have been exposed to as much otherwise. So I think it's been a great learning experience. And I know that we ended up in many cases not writing idiomatic Rust because, as you say, you've been sort of trying to avoid excessive borrow checker
Yeah,
abuse.
no macros, no lifetimes. It's not. Yeah, it's it's Rust intended for people that haven't used Rust before to be able to get in and figure it out fairly well.
Yeah.
Um, the same idea that's easy to port to Yacht once that's ready.
So Graham was asking about your secret project.
Nope, not a bad guess though. I would like to see at some point in some far future when we're all running Serenity on all our systems that you can pull up new shell in that and use that as your shell or your programming language of choice. That would be rad. But yeah,
Yeah, I guess that's really just a Rust port away in theory.
in theory, yep.
Let's see. Stan with the super sticker. Well, thank you. I can't actually see what the super sticker is. So if it is a cool cat or something like that, it just says super sticker. But I appreciate the super sticker. Thank you. Let's see. BBQ says, speaking of Serenity, now that Asahi has a beta and they made it easier to put your own OS on a Mac, kind of makes you think about the possibilities with M1 plus Serenity.
Fancy.
Fancy indeed. That's certainly something that you could attempt, my dear BBQ. And I don't think anybody would stop you. In
Big
fact,
shout out to the Asahi Linux folks too. They
yeah,
are plowing ahead doing stuff that is laying the groundwork for other things to come behind them and add support to M1, which is awesome.
yeah, that's kick ass. Those people are really, really productive. Really nice to see. I'm always impressed by reverse engineer people, like how fast they go.
Yeah, it's
If
a
I,
skill,
yeah,
and the people that have it are just like, wow,
yeah.
respect.
And if I were in that space, I would be hesitant to like work publicly because I feel like I would get stuck and then all these people would be watching me struggle. Like, I don't know, because it's such a opaque problem
Yeah,
space.
but it's got a good vibe. Like when they make a breakthrough, you can see everyone like high-fiving. And it's like, good
Yeah,
job, you got it. They know it's hard. They know it's hard. You don't get any docs, you don't get anything. And you're just
true.
trying to figure out how do we get booted? How do we get our system on there?
Yeah, indeed. So we missed the question from Sam, so I'm just
Yeah.
bring it up here. Thinking about build systems, I imagine Yacht will probably be invoked by the existing Serenity CMake at first. Do you think there might be a point where we replace CMake with the Yacht build system? Um, I don't know.
Hmm.
Serenity loves making things itself. Like it's kind of a project that is always expanding in scope. So it doesn't seem unthinkable that it would include a build system one day.
Sam, are you signing up to make a CMake replacement in Yacht? Is that what I'm seeing?
I think Sam is seriously considering it based on what I'm seeing here.
Interesting. I mean, we've been talking, just total aside, in New Shell, using New Shell in some novel ways, and one of them would be like a configuration language or a build script language or a CI server script. So you're not using YAML, and you're not using a bunch of other stuff. You can just use the same language across all of them. But
Yeah.
that'd be fun.
Okay, so we are out of time, but I spotted a question that I share, so I want to bring it up before we leave. JT, are you aware that you can choose a dark theme for your code editor?
Ha ha. Very funny. I get this comment like at least once a month. Someone's like, my eyes, my eyes. But the thing is, I argue, and actually my cousin Jason was telling me about this too. He's tried switching to other themes, and then there'll always be another set of people saying, I can't read it. Why are you using a dark theme? I can't read this. So there's no correct answer with the theme. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess so. Once you're like dug in, you just have to stand your ground.
Yeah. But it's yeah, different people can read it different. There's no good answer.
Yeah, there you have it. JT is dying on that hill.
I do use a dark theme now.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right.
Actually, I have one that changes with like the time of day. It'll change with the anyhow.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. No, I try using a light theme every now and then I don't know, just end up defaulting to the dark theme. I recorded a few videos in a light theme ones, and I got some angry comments.
I can just imagine the. I mean, it's one thing to have the dark theme and then it's kind of a little bit hard to read. It's another if you're sitting in bed watching a video on your phone and all of a sudden someone throws up a light theme code editor and you're just blinded. I can
Right.
imagine that's really annoying, but that's a fair point. I
Yeah.
might try recording one with a dark theme next and see if I get any comments like, "Oh, this dark theme is terrible."
Yeah, I think the more important thing is to have a large enough font. That
Yeah.
seems to do that's like the thing that does the most.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's wrap it up.
This
So,
is fun.
right, it's pretty chill. A lot of nice questions today. So thank you everybody for coming, asking questions, and poking fun at us when we struggle to figure out what the P word is. Thanks for all the super chats and stickers and stuff. Thank you,
Thanks
JT, for
everybody.
coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Welcome back anytime. And like the last thing I always say here is if you end up working on Serenity or Yacht this weekend, then please come hang out on Discord and share what you're doing so that we can all enjoy. With that, I'll see you next time.
Bye
Bye bye.
everyone.